Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about how to handle yourself in meetings. With the architect, the design team, when you might have engineers in the room and the owner's representative. Now, when you are in a meeting, when you're asked to be in a meeting, if you're a PE, as a PE, you really should be taking meeting minutes or notes for yourself, even. A lot of times, the architect or the owner's representative will have someone there taking meeting minutes, but for your own good and in order to have something to compare to, you really should be taking meeting minutes, if not for yourself, for your company. And also because in the meeting minutes, you will have the action items. So then you can keep track of really who's responsible for what. Whether it's the owner's representative that needs to make a decision on something, or if you need to write up a change order that was discussed during the meeting, whether you're a PM or a PE who needs to write this up. This way you won't forget things. And trust me, I've been there. When I first started as a PE and I was taking the meetings, I wouldn't write things down. And, oh yeah, I'll remember. I'll remember something. It's something very critical. I will remember. And come the end of the day, the PM would ask me, "Hey, did you get that done?" And I would say, "Oh no, I forgot." So very critical mistake on my part. And so obviously I got it done the next day. But sometimes there are going to be situations in which you're going to want to do it right then and there. With the meeting minutes, and as soon as you get back to the office, or even when you're out in the field walking the job, you might actually be able to start making phone calls depending on the action that needs to be taken and what the item is that needs to be taken care of. This is extremely important on a fast-paced project. If you have a compressed schedule, not just a fast-paced project, but a compressed schedule where you might have fell behind because of weather, inclement weather, whether it's snow or rain, things like that, where you can't work. And now all of a sudden time is of the essence. So you really need to be able to not just recall in your head, but also be able to write it down so that you can get things done and you won't let anyone down, especially yourself. Because I know I was especially hard on myself. As a matter of fact, I started carrying a spiral bound notebook in order for me to write notes as I'm walking the field and talking to my superintendent, which also proved to be very critical because I could keep track of the discussions that we had between myself, the project manager, and the superintendent when we were all there on site together after the meeting with the owner's representative. So it's something that was very important, turned out to be extremely important, especially because there are times when you will have someone on the design team or even the owner's representative who will say, "Oh, well, I didn't say that." And then you can look back on your notes from the previous meeting or 2 meetings ago, 2 weeks ago, or things that were said out in the field. You can look back at your notes and you say, "Yes, on this day when we were walking the job, you said yada, yada, yada." So it can actually be a very, very big benefit for you to take your own notes. And especially when it comes to, say, like change orders or change order requests, because if you write everything down, you won't forget what actually needs to go into your change order request. And I'll make another video addressing change orders, change order requests, and kind of the level of detail that you might need for certain situations, because there are times when something comes up and you can say, "Oh, we'll take care of that. Don't worry about it," if it's something small. And actually, this is something that can actually come into play, the note taking, when you're discussing things towards the end of the project and the change orders, because there will be times when the change order, even though they want to pay you, is something that's so small and you say, "Oh, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it," but the owner is very insistent on paying you for that. You can actually look back at your notes and, if you took that way, exactly what that change order request entailed, or that change order that would be change order, how much it would cost. And that way you don't forget any details of what actually went on with it. So then later on, when you are filling out a bigger change order request, you can actually put in the amount that was owed to you from the previous work that was done without an actual change order approval, but they said they would pay you anyways. So then you can kind of mix it in with the rest of the monies, and I'm talking about small change orders, $500-$600, maybe even $1,500, something like that. Those are small change orders. Of course, it depends on the size of the contractor and the size of the project. Obviously, you wouldn't do something like that for, say, like a $20,000-$30,000 project where your budget is kind of tight. Your overhead is quite a bit and things like that. You just didn't put that much money to begin with into it. That's a different story. That is the stuff that you really should submit your change order request for ahead of time before you actually do the work. Because then you might do the work and then they're going to say, when you try to charge for it later, then they'll come back to you and said, well, you said you would take care of it. Why am I being charged now? So little things like that, when you kind of have a verbal agreement, it's very good to write things down. Trust me, it'll save you headaches later on down the line on larger projects. Now, another thing or another area of concern is the verbal language and the mannerisms. As a PE, if you're there, really, even though you need to pay attention to the meeting and writing your notes and keeping the meeting minutes for yourself and for your company, you really should try to actively listen to the exchange between either a designer, whether it's the architect or the engineer, and the PM, or even the owner's representative or the owner's project manager and the your own project manager. Listen to the exchange and listen to how he presents the argument, especially for change order requests, things like that. There are certain phrases to avoid, and you really need to kind of feel out the other side. The owner's representative or the owner, whoever it is, the engineer, architect. You really should be able to somehow kind of get a feel for how they think and how they behave when you're in a meeting. But watch your project manager and actively listen to the words coming out of his mouth, because you will absolutely learn how you can kind of string them along or lead them on to get them to the answer that you want. And with this, you always want to, like I said, especially when you bring up things, and in the meetings also, you want to make sure that you've got evidence of what you're talking about, whether it's expert knowledge on your part because you are the contractor and you're actually building these things. The architect, although they can draw these things, doesn't always mean that you can build it. I've seen that argument before. It's like, well, why can't you build this? It's like, well, the way it is on the plans, we can't build it. It's just not what's out there, and it's not going to work. And the architect comes back with, well, I drew it that way. Well, just because you drew it, I can make lines to make all kinds of impossible things, doesn't mean that we can, physically build them. So you really want to, sometimes you really do want to parse your words, because they can come back to bite you. And not only with the owner's representative, but also with the architects and the engineers. Now, engineers, some of them are only school studied. They're only, they know what it was taught to them in the books. You might have some seasoned engineers that are open to what you want to do, and they'll look at it and say, okay, let me have that detail and I'll run the numbers. And if it's good, I'll give you the okay. And that's why a lot of times you want to present a solution along with your change order requests or request for information, an RFI. It's very, very important. So like I said, and also the mannerisms, no yelling, no finger pointing. They might kind of give a little signal of, yeah, it's over there type of thing. That's one thing. But when you're actually talking and conversing in a meeting about things might even get heated. But you should note the mannerisms, especially if they're a good project manager. If they're a good project manager, they might sit there, kind of with their hands crossed like this, just listening. But that's the thing. You always have to actively listen to both sides. Especially you will learn when they give some type of argument or some type of resistance, and the project manager responds with something very clever or something that, you can tell he's had experience in this, and now this is where I wouldn't say he's going to manipulate the architect, the engineer, or even the owner's representative. But what he's going to do is that he has experience to kind of get them to go in the direction that he would like. Now, it's not always going to work. You have to make sure that you're ready for that. There's going to be times when you're not going to win. It's going to be a win-lose situation whether you win and they lose or they win and you lose. And some of them, sometimes you just have to roll with the punches. Now, some of them are going to be a win-win situation where you can get it done the way you want and you can get paid, and also they benefit by having the thing built right. And maybe it might be a different design, but at least they'll know something that is, built right. There's also compromise. You might offer something and the engineer will change it, and it might not be as much of a change order as you thought it would be at the beginning, but you get to advance the project. You do get paid, probably not as much as you thought with the first change order or the manner in which you wanted to make the change in the first place, but that's how compromise works. You're gonna give a little, they're gonna give a little, so they're not getting the actual exact design that they envisioned, but also you're not doing it the way you want to be more efficient and make some money on the side, right? Because that's what contracting is, not just building buildings, putting things together, turning some screws and hammering some nails. You're in it to make some money. And as the PM, whether you're a freelance PM or you work for an organization, you have certain values that you express all the time and that you hold true. And those really should line up with the values of the organization that you're working for. Or like I said, if you're freelance project manager, you really should have some very good values and some very good morals, which will bring you back to some of your clients. Now, residential is one thing, but if you're working in commercial and with architects and engineers, there will be times when the owner will ask the engineer or the architect, is there a project manager or is there a construction company that you would recommend? And trust me, there's plenty of word of mouth work out there. And you want to present yourself in such a manner that you are the face of your organization, and the people, the architects and the engineers, although they might not tell you this, but quite a bit of them are self-absorbed. And for them to make a recommendation that you are pleasing to work with, or you work well, you know exactly what you're doing, that is one of the highest compliments that you can get from an architect or an engineer. So it's very, very important, like I said, for you to keep your meeting minutes, watch what you say, because things can be misconstrued all the time, misunderstood. So make sure you're clear and that you're concise with what you are saying. And you want to make sure that everyone in the room is on the same page. You don't want to obfuscate anything, because that will just cause confusion and the ball will be dropped somewhere. Whereas you might not get paid on time, or you might not get done what you said you were going to get done and provide for the project. So you really have to be careful with that one. So with that, I think we're going to end it here, and we'll see what I do for next time. But as you know, especially as of the taping of this episode, we're still in the pandemic. So whenever you go out, just like I always say at the end of my videos, make sure you're wearing your personal protective equipment, your hard hat, your safety glasses, your ear protection. And not only that, you really should be out there. Whether you're social distancing or not, you really should be wearing a mask. And I really do hope that you're social distancing. And I know some of the trailers out there are pretty big and some of them are very small in which to have some type of meeting. So just all I want to say is just be careful out there, because who knows, you might actually end up sick, and you're no good to anyone if you get sick. Okay. Excuse me. So really, really be careful. All right. So with that, I'll see you later. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, everyone.